Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. And in this video, we are going to solve a Power Query challenge or a Power Query problem. So we have this first table on the screen, which contains some data regarding some ice cream. We have some columns such as price quantity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we also have some price columns or the amount columns such as D base price, amount level 1, amount level 2. So what we want to do is we want to convert the first table into the second table, and we want to generate the bands or segments based on the price columns. So you can see that the first price column has the value of 30. So that means the first segment for the vanilla ice cream bar will start from 0, and then it will go on till the price quantity minus 1. So that will be 29. And the second band will start from this value and will go on till the value of the second column minus 1. And the same operation needs to be done for all the columns. And in case there are no values in the price quantity column, then the band will start from 0 and then it will go on to a very large number such as 9996 times. And for each band we are going to assign the price from these columns. So you can see that for the first band we have 30, for the second band we have 29.5, 29, 28.5, and similarly, since there is no value that can actually create a band, we are going to assign the 35 to the only band that we can actually form for that particular row. So I've already copied the data to Power BI. So let's start, and we can start with the raw data. So this is the raw data that we are going to use, and this is the solution that I've already created. So we are going to work step by step. And first thing that we need to do is we need to actually unpivot the columns that are going to form the band as well as the amount column. So we are going to select all the columns from the currency till UOM, and we are going to say right click, unpivot other columns, and you can see that if I zoom out a little bit, we now have the price quantity as well as the amount columns in the same column, and then we have the values for the band as well as the values or the amount that we want to put against those band in the value column. And I'm going to name the attribute instead of that as field name, and values find actually. So now that the columns are unpivoted, what we can do is we can actually group the whole table by the first 5 columns. So first of all, let me just rename this step, and this one will be just a simple unpivot. And we are going to select the first 5 columns, right click, group by, and we do not want to perform any summarization over the table. We simply want to return all the rows, click on OK. And this time you can see that we have the same structure of Excel, but this time we have the tables or the columns in an unpivoted form. So first of all, let's remove everything that is here with from the comma till the square bracket, which actually defines the data type of the columns that are there in that particular column. So you can see that nothing changes, only the data type has changed. So what we can do is first of all access the field name column as a list, and we return a list. So the idea behind the solution is that we are going to access all the rows from that particular table that we have seen earlier, the rows that start with the word price, and that way we will be able to access all the yellow highlighted rows, this row as well as this row in a form of a list, and then we can actually create a band based on those values. So let's go back, and instead of writing the code in this editor, I'm going to go to the advanced editor so that it is much easier to work with the M code. And this step is going to be just grouped, and we can move everything to the next line. So let me just clean up a little bit. So now we can start writing the M code that will help us in transforming the data. So I'm going to remove everything, and I can create a custom function that basically accepts something like current group as the parameter, and the count has to be renamed as transformation so that it is more meaningful. So we are going to return the current group itself, and let's change the spelling. So first of all, let me show you what the current group is actually going to return. So if I click done, there is no change in the result that we are showing. We still get the same table, but this time with the help of this function, we can actually simplify the code a lot. So let's zoom in, and we are going to create the let statement so that we can split the whole code into multiple variables. So to select the price rows, we are going to create a variable named as price rows, and we are going to select table dot select rows function so that we can select the rows from the current group table. and we are going to say that the column field name should start with the word price. And for that, we can use the function such as text dot starts with, and the column is field name. This field name column is coming from the current group because the table dot group function is going to supply that table to this particular function, and from there we can actually access the field name column. And we are going to say that the column should start with the word price. So if I close the function correctly and return this variable after the in statement and click on done, you can see that this time we are only returning or only showing the rows where the field name column actually starts with price, and these are the values that we have already seen inside Excel. And now we can actually access the value column and then start working on that. So let's go back, and instead of returning the full table, we can actually return the value column as a list. And let's format this a little bit so that it is more readable. So let's click on done, and you can see that we have a list containing the price, the values from the price list column. And what we can do is we can actually first of all extract the values of the first list or any other list. We can copy the entire list and go back to Excel so that I can show you what we are going to do in the solution. So let's say we place this list here. What we can do is we can actually copy this list and place it towards the right as well. But this time we are going to place it at a one position higher than the previous list. And what we can do is we can apply a operation such as subtracting -1, subtracting 1 from this particular value or the value of each value from that particular list. So if I minus that, I get 29. I can drag the formula down. I get 149, 599, 299, 599. And these are the same values that we see here. So what we can do is we can copy that and paste them as values. And in the first list, I can simply, just a second, in the first list, I can simply write a 0. And in the second list, I can simply write the 9 6 times. So if I press enter, and let's remove that, I think it should work. So if I delete this one, you can see that this is the band that we are showing here. And the same operation has to be done for all the other rows as well. So let's go back to Power BI and we can start with the code. I'm going to remove this variable and go to the advanced editor. And we are going to create a new step that is going to be named as shift values by 1. And we can use a function such as list.transform that basically allows you to transform all the values of a particular list. So we can say that list.transform, and since the price rows variable actually returns a list, that will work perfectly with the list.transform function. So in the first argument we need to say price rows, and then we are going to, for each value in the price rows list, we are going to apply the transformation that subtract -1 or 1 from that particular value. So if I return this particular list and click on done, you can see that we get 29, 149, 599, and similarly the -1 is subtracted, 1 is subtracted from each value. And if I go on to the next list, you can see that we get 29, 149, 599. We are also getting -1, which we are going to solve in a moment. And similarly for the last one, we are getting -1 everywhere because that particular row contains only 0. That's why we get a -1. So what we can do is we can actually pair another function which works on list, such as list.select. And we are going to say that select all the values that are not -1. So we can say each underscore is not equal to -1. So if I close that and click on done, this time for first one, we do not have the -1. For the second one, the -1 is removed. And for the final one, we are actually returning an empty list because all the values were -1. So finally, we need to append or insert the 9 6 time into each list in that particular column. And for that, all we need to do is write an ampersand, open the list constructor, and we need to write 9 6 times. And let's close that as well. Click outside, and you can see that for the first list, it is working. For the second one, it is working. And similarly, for the third one, it is working. And now what we can do is we can actually combine or join the price rows column as well as this particular list. And for that, we are going to create a new step, which is going to be 2 columns. And all we need to do is we need to open the curly bracket. We need to write price rows, and we need to write ampersand as well as the shift values by 1. So if I click outside and return that particular variable, you can see that we actually have a error here. So we need to write that shift values by 1. click outside, and you can see that we get a list that contains two lists. If I click on this list, we get a list within a list. So we need to join these two columns, and for that we can actually use a function such as table.from columns. So here we need to write that table.from columns, which actually accepts a list of list. So let's indent that and close that. If I click outside and click on done, so now we are returning a column that contains table. So if I click on that table, we have two columns, column 1 and column 2. The column 1 is the original column or the original list, whereas the column 2 is the one where we have applied transformation. But right now you can see that the result is not perfect because the value 29 is sitting beside 30, whereas it should be beside 0. The value 149 is beside 150, whereas it should be beside 30. And to fix that, what we can do is we can append a 0 to the column 1 as we have done with the column 2 by appending towards the end the large number. So let's go back to advanced editor and let's zoom in. So we can come to the table.from columns function, and we are going to append the 0 in the price rows list. So we can simply say 0 ampersand, let's close the curly bracket ampersand, and if I click on done and click on the table once again, you can see that we have fixed the problem. The band actually starts from 0 and goes on till 29, starts from 30, goes till 149, 150, 599. Similarly for the second table and for the third table as well. So right now you can see that we have zeros as well as null in column 1 and column 2 respectively for both rows, and we can fix that in the next step. But before that, we actually need to provide the names for these columns as well as the data type. So let's go into advanced editor, and we can do that in the table.from columns function. So in the second argument of table.from column to column, table.from column and table.from rows, you can actually specify the data types of the columns that you are creating. And to do that, there is a special syntax that you need to use, which is type table, and you need to open the square bracket and provide the name of the column. So first column is actually the minimum column, and the data type is int64.type. Similarly for the second one, the name is going to be maximum is equal to int64.type, and the third column is going to be price, but we do not have the price column yet, so let's remove that for a moment. And if I click on done, you can see that we get minimum as well as maximum. So now that we have these two columns, what we can do is we can actually attach the third column that we had in the Excel. So let me just go back. So the third column is going to come from here, which will have these values. So let's go back to advanced editor and see how we can write the code for that particular step. So just before the two column step, we are going to create another step, which is going to be named as amount rows. And for this one, first of all, let me just return the current group variable, and let's return that particular step in the in statement. So if I go back to this table, what we want to do is we want to return all the values for dbase price as well as amount level columns. So we want to get 30, 29.5, 29. And for that, we can use the same operation by searching for the column that start with dbase or the amount. So let's go back to advanced editor. And we can say that table dot select rows, and this is going to be the table supplied by the function, and we are going to say that each text dot starts with the field name column, the value is going to be dbase, and similarly we are going to say that or not oracle text dot starts with same field name column, and we are going to say that the value is going to be amount or just AMOU. And let's close the amount rows step. And if I return this step, which we are already doing, so if I click on done, you can see that we are returning only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. And these are the rows that will actually provide us the column value. So let's go back to advanced editor. And before that, if I click on this table, you can see that we have some rows which contain 0. And for this one, all the rows contain 0. So we can filter out those rows as well. So let's go back to advanced editor, because that will actually allow us, that will actually simplify the join that we are performing in the two column step. And to do that, we need to use an AND condition, because the OR condition was only to check for each row that the value can actually start with this or either this. But for each row, we actually need to make sure that the value column doesn't contain a 0. even though this check is passed, we do not want that check to fail. So what we can do is we can actually open round bracket and we can close that as well. And then we are going to write that and the value column should not be 0. So if I click on done, this time you can see that we are not returning the rows that contain the value 0 in the value column, and similarly for this table as well. So let's go back to advanced editor, and now that the amount rows step is prepared, what we can do is we can simply access the value column from that. So if I click on done, we are now returning a list, and now we can append that list to the 2-column step. So what we need to do is in the 2-column step, when we are creating our table with the help of the list constructor, we can actually add another list. So we can simply say that amount rows, and we can provide the name of the column as well. Here in the second argument, we can say that the column name is going to be price and the data type is going to be currency dot type. So if I click on done and make sure that I'm returning that variable or that step, you can see that we have a table that contains the minimum value, maximum, as well as the price. Similarly for this step and then for this step as well. And finally, we can remove all the rows that contain null. So let's go back to advanced editor and we need to create a new step. And we can name the step as remove nulls. So we can use the same function, which is table dot select rows on the previous step, which is 2 columns. And we can pick any column, either the min column or the max column. We can say maximum is not equal to null. And let's return that particular step. If I click on done, we get an error. So let's see why. And we need to write an each here as well. So if I click outside, we get a table. This table doesn't have any impact because there were no null rows. For this one, you can see that we have removed the null rows. For this one, we are only getting one single row. So now that we have transformed the data, what we can do is we can actually expand this particular column. But right now there is a problem. So if I uncheck this option and click on OK, you can see that even though we have specified the data type of that column, this column as well as this column in the previous step, the data types are not actually retained. And to fix that, what we can do is we can actually specify the data types of the column in the group by step, which we actually removed at the start of the video. So let's go back to advanced editor, and all we need to do is we need to copy this particular code and write a comma here, and we can paste it here, and let's outdent it. And if I click on done, you can see that here the data type of the column has changed from the any to a table. And this time if I expand the table itself, you can see that we get integer as well as currency. So that's how you can actually force the Power Query to retain data types that are actually getting lost in case if you do not specify or omit that particular data type from the table.group argument. So now we have our solution, and if I bring up Excel once again, you can compare them side by side, you can see that we have a table that shows us. So let me just place it here. We have the band starting from 0 till 29 and the value is 30. We have 30 to 149 and the value is 29.5. And for the last one where we didn't have many values or any value in the price quantity column, we are creating the band that starts from 0 and goes on till the large number that we have inserted, and the value that is provided is 35. And similarly, the solution is working for the second item as well. And that's how you can actually transform that particular table to get this result, and how you can create your custom bands by unpivoting the data inside Power Query. And that was all for this video, and I will see you in the next one.